Good morning all, and welcome to this special budget meeting, Wednesday 15th of July 2020 for the South Bennett Regional Council. Welcome councillors, staff, members of the media, and a special welcome to Pastor Glenn Vonhoff and Pastor Max Conlon. I'll now call the meeting open, and do we have any leave of absences, any apologies? No. We don't, so we'll proceed on to the welcoming prayer, and we'd like to now invite Pastor Glenn Vonhoff to open the meeting with his welcoming prayer. Thank you, Pastor Glenn.
In fact, we live in Gympie, and but our business interests have been in Mergen, so Kathy's our representative. And I played football with Brett's dad even before he was married, so I've known Brett since he was little. I know a few stories about him, but I won't tell you any of them today. But it's good to be here. I want to share with you a little bit about a guy in the United States. Once a year, they have a day called Meet You at the Pole. And what they do is everyone from the high school is invited to go to the flagpole. They're very nationalistic in the United States. And to go to that flagpole once a year and pray for that high school. And so this day, one guy turned up at a high school called Lake Minneapolis. And he was there all on his own. Now, you'd feel very self-conscious, wouldn't you? Out of your whole high school, nobody else comes. So your first thought would be, this is a waste of time. I'm here on my own. Why would I bother staying here looking like a dork? With no one else around. But he didn't go. He stayed there and he stood there and he prayed. And someone took a photograph of him and they put it on Facebook. And they rang up his mum. Someone rang up his mum and said, have a look at Facebook. And the mum looked at Facebook and saw her son standing there on his own praying. And you know what? He got such a good reaction. Not only Christians commended him for doing what he believed was the right thing, but he had a lot of people who weren't Christians, atheists, running and said, well, look, I'm not a Christian, but he stuck up for what he believed in. He did the right thing. And that's what I want to ask you to do today. It's not always easy to do the right thing. I want to give you a reading from Proverbs in the Old Testament. It says this: let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or the left. Keep your foot from evil. You know, I've been around a fair while and I know it's very easy, particularly in politics, to make decisions based on convenience. Or maybe a decision to support somebody who's not doing the right thing because they've promised to support you, what you want to do. But I want to challenge you, like that young fella, to do the right thing, to serve your community, to keep your eyes fixed on what's right. Let's pray. Father, as this council meets here today, we ask that every councillor does the right thing for their constituents. As they serve their people, Lord, we thank you that they have offered to serve the people of this community. And we ask, Lord, that whether they're Christians or non-Christians or whatever, they know what is right and what is wrong. We ask you to bless them, to give them wisdom, so that they have the courage to do what is right. But we commit this council meeting today to you. We ask your blessing over it in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you for allowing me to be here. It's been good. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Pastor Glenn, and our sincere appreciation, and God bless you. Trust you have a wonderful day. I'd now like to invite Pastor Max Conlon, also an elder of the Waka Waka people, to invite to also be part of opening the meeting and giving us the welcome to country. Thank you, Pastor Max.
Good morning, Mayor Otto. Reading a lot, haven't you, eh? I haven't got a lolly to give you, but I can book you up till pension, eh? That's great, and that's a special place up there, isn't it, eh? If you know your history, it's a really special place. But you're talking about collectively, individually? What about individually? And I'll tell you why soon.
Relationship, or bad things happen. Hopefully.
That's good. Yes. Individually, there was, and I'll quickly just finish on it. Individually, you think of people like Steve Reynolds, Blood from Sherbeck Mob, Eddie Gilbert, and there's many other icons that came out, and that little short fella, Chris Sander, and that came after. It just didn't happen by chance, did it? It took a process of time.
Yes, Pastor Max. I think about the journey that people were taken on against their will into one community from all parts of the country, and they had to come together and learn to live together. Being from different nations, they had to learn to live together, and I think they did that, and they used a wonderful sense of humour to get them through. And I think they have created a wonderful legacy for us as a people, as a world, as to how different people from different backgrounds, different tribes, different nations learnt to live together. I think of my wife's grandmother, who was taken from her family as stolen generation and put in the dormitory at Cherbourg and then sent out as a domestic slave. And I think about how many people like her never ever saw their parents again, and how much intergenerational trauma that must have caused. So sorry times, but also a celebration of the strength and resilience of the Indigenous people. We should all be very proud as a nation of what a wonderful culture we have on our doorstep.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I look like I'm chairing a meeting today. So there are good, there are positives, and there are negatives. So what we can do with the negatives is learn from that, but strengthen us and cause us to create a strong mind and a sense of vision. A good leader, a lot of the positives out of those guys that were positives and became icons in the communities, not only nationally, but individually in the South Burnett, they had people that supported them. Some of them had a vision. They were collectors and gatherers, our mob, but some of them had a vision. And if the old saying is, without a vision, what will happen? You can get nowhere unless you get a vision. So I say to you guys, thank you for your support. Thank you for who you are from my mob in the South Burnett. I don't know a lot of you guys, but I'd love to meet you one day. And what you said, we've got a good sense of humour. And I do radio on a Sunday, and we just do a lot of laughing, and people are just collecting in, coming from all over the country to listen to the Burnett with Murray Radio and the Gospel Hour. So I say that they've got a lot to give, my mob, and you've got a lot to give. You're in a position, a great and a wonderful position to be change makers. Many minds together, and my old people always say that many minds and many eyes, there's value in that. If you can walk together, you've got great minds, you've got great hands, you've got great mouths, you've got strong feet that you can walk. If you collectively put them together, it become a powerful force. So in saying that, welcome to our country, and we have to recognise our mob. And I thank you for who you are and what you give to my mob and to our country. Thank you, Mayor Otto.
Thank you, Pastor Max. And what an inspirational way to start our meeting today from both Pastor Glenn Bonhoff and Pastor Max Collin from the Waka Waka tribe. And of course, the Indigenous people of our land have left a wonderful and continue to create a wonderful legacy for us who are much newer to their country to build stronger communities and a stronger sense of belonging. Thank you very much, Pastor Max. Thank you very much. Right, well, we'll now move on to declarations of interest. Do we have any as such for this special meeting? Okay, if there are no declarations of interest, we'll now move on to item 6.1 on the agenda at page 6. Council is required to adopt an annual operational plan pursuant to section 174(1) of the Local Government Regulation 2012, which states how Council will progress the implementation of the Corporate Plan 2018-2019 to 2022-23 during the 2021 financial year. In the development of the plan, Council has taken an innovative and succinct approach whereby the most appointed and critical elements of operational delivery for 2021 have been encompassed within the plan. This approach provides a more compact, digestible document for our community to understand and monitor. The officer's recommendation is that in accordance with section 174(1) of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council adopt the South Bennett Regional Council Annual Operational Plan for 2020-21. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Do we have any councillors who would like to speak to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In my short 3 months of council, I've really enjoyed being a part of the operational planning process, in particular the opportunity to feedback the priorities of residents of Division 4 and the people of the South Burnett. I also recognise the importance of this process in terms of setting this year's budget. As I've said many a time, every dollar of our shareholders, the ratepayers of the South Burnett, invest in our region is a hard-earned dollar that must be invested wisely. This operational plan clearly sets out the core services that Council will deliver, and I recognise this cannot be achieved without the efforts of Council staff. I value the work Council staff attribute to our region, a place they also call home, and I'm pleased to see the desire to support a future-focused Council team that is cohesive and takes individual ownership of Council's values. I see job satisfaction, recognition and pride important, and it's great to see this included in the plan. Clearly, this Council has a strong agenda for strategic planning and sustainability, and I recognise meaningful employment, employee and community engagement will be critical to setting our region's vision and objectives for this term of Council, now and into the future. Key projects that I know are important to the residents of Division 4 and across the region that are in the plan include the investigation of options for recycling, and I too share the importance of doing all that we can, a belief in the importance of doing all that we can to responsibly manage our environmental footprint. I've also had a number of conversations with residents in Kingaroy who would like to see better connectivity so that they can walk their kids to school, safely walk the pram to town, or for some, ride or run to the shops or to work. I see the development of a strategic plan for footpath infrastructure an important step forward and an opportunity to identify how this infrastructure can support the way in which we live our lives. Another exciting project is the planning of improvements to our town entrances and CBD footpaths across the region. I see the works undertaken in Mergen a great example of how the refurbishment of footpaths can really transform a town. I also welcome the opportunity to review all rating categories, a task that has not been undertaken since amalgamation. As a councillor, I see this rates review as an opportunity to take a deep dive and ensure a fair and consistent approach across all rating categories. Similarly, in the review of plant and fleet operations, I believe there are many opportunities we may potentially find more savings and efficiencies. This operational plan includes a focus on achieving value for money when sourcing materials, services and works, and recognises the desire for Council to support local business and providers wherever possible. I look forward to working with this team as we continue to ask the tough questions, to challenge our thinking and share our ideas in our pursuit of supporting our community, searching for innovations and achieving long-term sustainability. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In closing, I'd like to thank and acknowledge Council staff, General Managers and the CEO, and my fellow councillors for your commitment to the year ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. If no other councillor wishes to speak to the matter, I will again just reconfirm the officer's recommendation that in accordance with section 174(1) of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council adopt the South Bennett Regional Council Annual Operational Plan for 2020-21. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 6.2 on the budget is the Mayor's Budget Address for the 2020-2021 budget. The 2020-21 budget, the first step in moving forward together. Fellow councillors, staff, media, and most importantly, the people of the South Burnett, it is with great sense of responsibility that I table the South Bennett Regional Council's 2020-21 budget. To the people of our region, this is your money, this is your budget, this is your freshly elected council's first strategic initiative in starting the process of rebuilding our economy and providing you with a brighter future. At the recent election, you, the people, made clear your expectations of council. Reasonable expectations of better value for money for ratepayers, improved service standards, enhanced facilities for youth, families, the disabled and elderly, as well as a commitment from council to create an environment that encourages investment in our region, promotes economic prosperity and population growth, and most importantly, supports the sustainable development of all communities across our rural towns and villages, irrespective of size and location. I can say with hand on heart that as your new mayor, I have left no stone unturned in working through the budget line by line, and with my fellow councillors, our CEO and staff have made every effort to deliver a budget that provides a responsible and compassionate response to the economic challenges facing the people of our region in these unprecedented times. Having said that, this budget is far from perfect. Indeed, it is very much a work in progress, and I acknowledge that we have much more work to do. It is, however, an important first step and reflects the priorities outlined in Council's operational plan for the 2020-21 financial year. Priorities that constitute the early stages of creating more prosperous and livable communities. It is a $108 million plan to kickstart the process of building a stronger South Bennett through partnerships with higher levels of government and by working together with stronger connection to and better engagement with community. In delivering this budget, Council remains conscious of the financial, social and emotional burden endured by our region's residents through the cumulative impact of the ongoing drought and the COVID-19 pandemic. To the people of the South Bennett, those whose small businesses are suffering, who have had their hours cut or lost their jobs, farmers who are still battling the drought, families who are facing rising costs of living, pensioners and retirees who are struggling to make ends meet. We understand that you are doing it tough and that there is much uncertainty on the horizon. In response to such, Council has been careful to formulate a considered and measured response to supporting the community through these challenging times. A response that provides short-term relief without compromising the ability of Council to sustain a sound financial position and asset management strategy for future generations. As such, this budget response includes the first 0% general rate rise in the history of the South Bennett Regional Council, achieved through savings of approximately $1.4 million to Council's proposed operating budget. These savings will be delivered alongside a long overdue pay increase of 2.5% for staff and absorbing an expected CPI increase to the cost of materials and services of around 2%. A 0% increase to council-controlled fees and charges. A 0% increase to the commercial wheelie bin charge in support of small business. An amnesty on outstanding debt recovery during the COVID period. Miscellaneous case-by-case deferral or relief of service charges for local not-for-profit community organisations. Refunding all prepaid council facility reservations and a commitment to supporting local small business through reforms to Council's procurement policy. While Council will receive no additional income from general rates due to the capping of such, it is important to note that some ratepayers' general rates will increase, while others will decrease. This is due to the phased-in valuation of their land. Council adopted 3-year valuation averaging as a means of smoothing or phasing in the large land valuation increases caused by the land revaluation undertaken by the Department of Natural Resources, Mines and Energy as at 1 July 2019. As part of Council's engagement policy, I will be holding community forums across the region throughout the first week of August to provide further community information on rates and charges. An operating budget of $70 million will support the delivery of key community services and facilities maintenance programs. Within this $70 million, $28 million has been set aside for asset renewals, underpinning Council's strong commitment to sustainable infrastructure across our extensive road network, water, wastewater, and community buildings and parks and gardens assets. In doing so, Council is ensuring existing assets are available for the benefit of future generations. The current year budget is projected to result in a $2.2 million cash surplus, with an overall operating deficit of $3.6 million after depreciation. A significant contributing factor is an increase in depreciation of almost $2 million, largely due to the recent revaluation of building assets. At 30 June 2021, Council's current assets are projected to $49.2 million, including $43 million in cash at bank. Current liabilities are projected to $14.8 million. Total assets are projected to $951 million, with total liabilities at $61 million, of which council borrowings are projected to reduce to $33.6 million. Council has adopted a debt policy of no new borrowings for the 2020-21 financial year. Total community equity is projected to increase to $890 million by 30 June 2021. As highlighted, the budget position reflects the first stage in the budgetary process. Council will be embarking on a series of further financial reviews during the course of the year with the objective of balancing Council's financial position against economic conditions. Such will include, but not be limited to, a comprehensive study into rating categories to create improved equity in council rates, an independent audit of the roads and building assets valuation reports, further review of asset management plans as to priorities for buildings, parks and gardens, a detailed review of council's motor vehicle fleet, and if necessary, a mid-year review of the 2020-21 rates and charges in response to COVID-19. In addition to the operating budget, asset management planning has facilitated the development of a $38 million capital investment program to be shared across all communities, encompassing $22.5 million on roads, drains and bridges, $5.8 million on buildings, parks and gardens, $3 million on water infrastructure, $3.7 million on sewerage and wastewater infrastructure, $2.3 million on plant, $350,000 on waste assets, and $480,000 on information technology systems. Providing secure and reliable water and sewerage services are a significant responsibility for all councils. Our local water and sewerage network is under increasing stress due to ageing infrastructure. Long-term financial forecasts indicate that additional cash reserves will be required to fund significant capital expenditure associated with the replacement and upgrading of essential water and sewerage assets. In order to accumulate the required cash reserves, Council has adopted a measured and responsible approach to increasing water and sewerage charges so as to smooth the impact on users over consecutive years. As such, to provide for sustainable management of these critical assets, water and sewerage user charges will increase as follows for the 2020-21 financial year. The water access charge for urban residential users will increase by 2%, from $611.50 per annum to $624 per annum, an increase of $12.50. Water consumption charges will increase by 2.1%, from $1.54 to $1.57, 3 cents per kilolitre on Tier 1 consumption, and similarly 2.1% on Tiers 2 and 3. An annual increase of $1.56 per annum for a household consuming, say, 52 kilolitres per annum. The wastewater sewerage charge will increase by 2%, from $724.70 to $739 per annum, an increase of $14.30 per annum. Overall, most urban residential ratepayers will pay an additional $28.36 per annum for water and sewerage services. The current water feasibility study, funded by the Commonwealth Government's National Water Infrastructure Development Fund, will be crucial to identifying future solutions for water security and will provide a platform upon which Council will actively pursue government investment in our region's water infrastructure needs. Council cannot rely solely upon ratepayers to fund our aged and deteriorating water and wastewater network, and as such will need to lobby state and federal governments to recognise and support this critical infrastructure for our rural communities. Council is compelled by state legislation to make provision for future landfill costs. Long-term financial forecasts indicate that additional cash reserves will be required to fund significant capital expenditure associated with future landfill. In order to accumulate the required cash reserves, Council has again adopted a measured and responsible approach to increasing waste charges so as to smooth the impact on users over consecutive years. As such, waste user charges will increase as follows: the 2020-21 financial year. The Waste Management Levy will increase by 8%, from $150.50 to $162.50 per annum, an increase of $12, including a $2.50 charge to maintain the current opening hours at all tips and to increase the opening hours at the Mergen and Wandai tips to 7 half-days per week. Domestic wheelie bin charges will increase by 2%, from $165 to $168 per annum, an increase of $3. There will be no increase to the commercial wheelie bin charge, remaining at $243 per annum. Overall, most urban residential ratepayers will pay an additional $15 per annum for waste collection and disposal services. The Community Rescue and Evacuation Levy will increase from $4 per annum to $5 per annum, with all funds going directly to Life Flight. The State Emergency Management Levy, also known as the Rural Fire Levy, will not increase, remaining at $130.20 per annum. This means that most residential ratepayers will have an increase of $44 a year, or 85 cents a week, with the total change in rates and utility charges of 1.9% compared to rates and utility charges levied in the 1920 budget. Rural ratepayers without water, sewage and bin collection services are not subject to these charges. Council's maximum $200 pensioner rebate remains, matched by the $200 maximum state government pensioner subsidy. I will continue to advocate strongly to state and federal governments on behalf of the people of the South Burnett for a more equitable share of funding. Insufficient funding from government to Council's operations has repeatedly compromised our capacity to deliver essential services and infrastructure and to minimise the burden on ratepayers. Private sector investment is a key strategic priority for Council. Our ability to grow our population and to provide improved living standards for our people is significantly dependent on long-term job creation. Fostering greater diversity in our regional economy is a key factor in building increased resilience and economic security. Council will work to engage much more productively with private companies and public sector agencies to foster industry growth across our region in sectors such as agricultural production, food processing, freight distribution, manufacturing, the arts and tourism. Mental health issues across the state of Queensland have been further exacerbated by the COVID-19 crisis. I am confident that our region can provide a healthy option for people seeking a more balanced and authentic lifestyle post-COVID-19, and as such lead to a renewed period of tree change inspired population growth. By working together, we can position our region to achieve its potential, a potential for enhanced livability and economic prosperity that is underpinned by our enviable country lifestyle, welcoming communities, an abundance of rich and diverse natural resources, close proximity to burgeoning coastal and urban populations, and importantly, export hubs, including Toowoomba's Wellcamp Airport. I wish to acknowledge and thank my fellow councillors, our CEO, Mark Pitt, council staff, and in particular, our General Manager of Finance and Corporate Services, Susan Jarvis, and her staff for their concerted efforts in bringing the 2020-21 budget to fruition. I have a strong sense that the current decade will provide a renewed period of regional prosperity. By uniting as one region comprised of many diverse communities, we will move forward together. Thank you. Right. I would now move that the Mayor's budget address for the 2020-21 budget be received. Do we have a second for such? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Right. Are there councillors who would like to speak to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really pleased to second this recommendation, and I'm just thinking that everybody in the whole region will be excited about the fact that we have got a zero rate rise. And I know that wherever you go across the region, the one thing that people, that they all say, and it can be, doesn't matter whether it's rural or in our towns or wherever, they just don't want the rates to go up. So that was our charter, was to try and put to present a zero rate rise, and I just I know there's been a lot of hard work. As the Mayor said, we've gone through the budget line by line because that was what the community has asked us to do. They've asked us to be really, really careful about the expenditure because they want to see that the rates capped. And so I'm really pleased to endorse this. I know that there have been some cuts in some areas, and particularly maybe tourism and economic development, but I think that moving forward that we can work closely with our local tourism organisations and our business community to do economic development and tourism in a better way and partner with those particular groups to get better outcomes. And so the other thing that is exciting for me is that we didn't cut anything in the road section, and I know that we've done a huge job over the previous years to make sure that we've upgraded our roads, and so there's been no cuts there, and I know that everybody, again, across the region is always wanting to make, the roads have been a big issue, so we've been careful to keep that budget so that it's we haven't cut there at all. We've been really careful, and I know that Mergen and Wandi, with the tips, we've got now those half days will be a good news story for them because there wasn't equity there, I felt, and when we had the listening tours, both Mergen and Wandi said that their tips weren't open the same hours as everyone else, so now we've got those half days in Mergen and Wandi, which I think will be a good news story for those communities. I think that it's exciting what's happening. I know there can be some negativity in the rural sector about the Kingaroy Revitalisation project, but a lot of that's the money that the council's putting forward is infrastructure that we were going to have to do underground stuff that no one's going to see. But everybody says that Kingaroy looks tired, and I just think it's going to be exciting to see what we can do for Kingaroy with that fantastic federal government money. I'm also excited about the support we've had with the drought money, the $1 million we've got there, and also the other COVID money. So there's going to be a lot of exciting things happening in our region as we move forward. So although we've made cuts, we've also got some grants and things because of the COVID and our drought. And so I think that it's a responsible budget. I think that it's a careful budget, and I think it's an exciting budget. So I just wanted to thank the Mayor, the CEO, the senior staff, and all the councillors for working together as a team to produce a budget that I think will be a good news story for our region. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Any other councillors wish to speak to the matter? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I definitely recognise this has been a very difficult task. I've found it difficult because I know in my heart that every dollar is a dollar of the people. I found it hard because as a council, we've had the difficult task of balancing the needs of the people with the services and the cost of those services that we provide. Services that are critical to the quality of life for the residents of the South Burnett. I'd like to start by personally thanking you, Mayor Otto. You have supported this council's desire to go over the budget numerous times, line by line. You've then spent many hours late into the night in search of potential efficiencies, and because of your commitment to the task, while it wasn't easy, we were able to together go back through the budget and find more considerable cost savings. This has meant savings for the people. I also have burned through a few red pens and highlighters in the process myself. However, in this very short time that we have had to come together as a team, it's been a pleasure working with you and my fellow councillors and the executive team, all with a shared focus on achieving the best possible outcomes for our shareholders, the ratepayers of the region. I know when many of us started 2020, we were glad to say goodbye to 2019 as it had been a long, hard year for many, particularly on the back of the drought. It's hard to believe 6 months in, we're still challenged by drought. We face significant bushfires and now we face a global pandemic. And these are certainly uncharted waters. While the state and federal government's response to COVID has helped our region to sustain itself, I fear how businesses and residents will cope post-September when the JobKeeper payments end. While I'm grateful for the diversity of our economy and the health of our community, and know many businesses who have adapted their operations, there are many in retail, hospitality, and tourism who may find it harder to bounce back. No doubt these have been tough times, and I've been inspired by the people in our community who continue to do everything they can to support their family's way of life and to keep their doors open. I therefore fully support a 0% general rate rise because I see we have much work ahead of us to really understand where every dollar is really needed. I'm mindful that some households may still notice a change in their rates due to the second year values of the 3-year valuation averaging. However, it's my view in this current economic climate that the decision to freeze the general rate is the right one, as is the focus on undertaking a comprehensive review of the rating categories over this next 12 months. Clearly, when you look at the differential rate in the dollar, there's clear disparity across the different categories. I would like to see, and I support the engagement and the process in terms of developing a rates reference group and to work with local ratepayers to really unpack and understand the methodology for calculating differential general rates in an effort to ensure a fair and consistent approach across the region. While there are some minor increases to the water access charge, water usage charge, sewage and refuge collection that I know will be difficult in some households, I am supportive of these because I recognise the importance of putting away some funds for works, including the rehabilitation of landfills and the replacement of ageing water and sewage infrastructure. After careful consideration, it's my view these services are critical to our way of life. They are value for money, and to be sustainable, Council must recover the cost of providing these services into the future. In terms of economic development and some of the comments Councillor Duff has made, I accept the challenge. We have a challenge to innovate, to find another way and to deliver value. We have a challenge to encourage investment in our region, and we have so many hard-working businesses who are already stepping up to the plate and accepting that challenge. I look forward to this challenge, I look forward to the months ahead, and I thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this process. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Do we have any other councillors who wish to speak? Thank you, Councillor Froloff.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, councillors, CEO and general managers. First of all, I'd like to thank the council staff for their hard work and dedication to help get this budget up on time. This budget has not been easy for any of the departments in South Burnett Regional Council. I support this budget, but however, I do have reservations in certain areas, such as the general rate increase, and with the water, wastewater and waste management increasing minimally. My concerns are that without an increase in the general rates, that the level of services in certain areas could decline and not be up to standard to the ratepayer or expectations. However, I totally support the capital works program in this 2021 budget, as we will be focused on strengthening its infrastructure to support the community, livability and economy. The South Burnett Regional Council has undertaken a strong assets management strategy for renewal of its rural and urban transport assets, along with substantial water main and sewer relining programs. We have committed $4 million towards rural road resheeting programs across our region and $1.7 million towards the reseal programs, and I am proud to announce the link between Rural Road and Brights Road will be sealed, and also the Mercer Springgate intersection will also be resealed in this budget. South Bennett Regional Council has also committed $3.5 million towards the major sewer reline program in Nanango and Kingaroy, as they have been identified through the Critical Asset Management Assessment. And I would also like to announce that the Nanango State School pedestrian bridge will be replaced, and air conditioning and window replacements will also be taking place at the Nanango Cultural Centre. New playground equipment will be replaced in Reg McCullum Park with a safety fence, and also in Pioneer Park and Butter Factory Park. In conjunction with these projects have been able to be achieved only through the grants such as Work for Queensland and drought funding. The Nanango Community Group and with Council, with the all-inclusive park, there will be a sealed handicap car park and shelter over the playground, equipment and barbecue area. Once the Butter Factory Park has been completed, it will be the first all-inclusive park in the South Burnett region. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the Mayor and the staff of the South Bennett Regional Council in securing grants through the state and federal government for not only my division of Nanango and surrounds, but in all areas across the South Burnett, with many exciting things happening soon across the region. So I would like to finish once again thanking the Mayor, my fellow councillors, CEO Mark, and the general managers and the wonderful staff for their hard work and dedication over the past months to have us standing here today delivering the 2021 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Councillor Potter.
Mr Mayor, Councillors, CEO and Senior Management, we are in unprecedented times. Therefore, this is called for an unprecedented budget. So we have all had to tighten our belts and think of ways to reduce expenditure by looking at efficiencies within the council, whilst considering community needs, wants and expectations. So with a 0% rate rise to help in these difficult times and a 0% rise in the fees and charges specific to council services, Council has not shied away from making the tough decisions needed to ensure Council remains sustainable and has the capacity to deliver infrastructure projects in future years to keep progress moving forward and thriving in our community. Tourism and economic development will be an area of focus and discussion over the next 12 months, and we must make sure we investigate ways we can manage this, especially now with the COVID-19 restrictions. We need tourism and economic development in the South Burnett, so we must look at ways we can fund, develop and push economic development and tourism in the South Burnett. Liquid gold, otherwise known as water, is one of our most precious resources that we need to survive and grow our community. It is imperative that we continue to investigate ways we can acquire more of this commodity so it can expand and thrive. With this in mind also, we still need to make sure we're looking after our community, keeping at the forefront the need for growth and security, which includes the water availability, wastewater and waste. We are preparing for the future needs of our community. Looking into the future also, we have many projects underway and I look forward to seeing them come to fruition and the impact within our community. The Kingaroy streetscape will be a boost to the local economy and will make the Kingaroy town a brighter and safer place to be. The Knight Street roundabout will make one of the most confusing intersections in Kingaroy easier and safer to negotiate for all. Council's renewed commitment to the resealing program, to the gravel resheeting and maintenance program on our rural roads throughout the whole region, the sewer relining project to help expand the life of council's sewerage and infrastructure. But last but not least, I'd like to thank the Mayor, Councillor, CEO and all the incredible staff for their hard work that they've put into preparing this budget. I know it wasn't easy, but your efforts have not gone unnoticed, and I thank you all again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Henshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, CEO, Mr. Pitt, our fellow councillors, to the gallery and to the people, public that are watching and listening. And well, here we are, bringing down our first budget as a new council for 2021, and hasn't that been challenging? When we were elected as a new council, our mayor said we encourage open, constructive debate. Well, haven't we had that over the last couple of months? And that has been healthy, and that's what the people want. And I encourage that to continue over the next 12 months, 2 years, 4 years. I will support this budget, and there's been a lot of work go into it. I don't necessarily agree with everything, and that's been what some of the open debate and constructive criticism has been around our table. I'm concerned where we will be, this council, in the next 12 months and the next 2 years and 4 years. But we as a council and the representatives for the people of our divisions and the South Burnett have to work together to make things happen. Now, I did state, and people would remember hearing me say early in the piece, council has to make decisions it's never made before. We started in a normal world. What is normal now with COVID-19? Our world has been turned upside down. Now, we have to work with that and around that, not against it. And I encourage the people out there in the community, and of course all us councillors here and representatives and our general managers and our staff right down the chain to be positive. There is so much negativity out there that it can be really, really disappointing. If we look at the positives in this, we will go forward. The South Burnett is in a position it has never been in before. Many have heard me say that before early in the piece. Now we're in that position, but in a totally different sense. We have and are capable of some of the best produce in the world in this area. We are a rural sector, a big rural sector. People know I'm a rural man. I have my own rural business. I know only too well how important produce, and I know only too well how important water is. Our water is our lifeline. If we don't have water, we don't have anything. Our dams, our tributaries that run to those facilities are a wonderful asset to this community. Along with that, our rural sector, there's nothing we can't produce, and like I said, it's some of the best in the world. Our tourism sector is about to knock doors down. Now, if we want to look at negativity, yes, our tourism industry, along with our businesses, have been crucified in some shape or form with COVID-19. But if we want to turn that around and look at a positive, we're on the doorstep of something absolutely fantastic, and all of that needs supporting. We as a council need to support that, and we need to listen to and work with our community, our businesses, our tourist industry, everything across the board. There's nothing we can't do in this area. Can I touch briefly on the previous council and some of the great work they've done? That's probably gone unnoticed. There's some projects that have been finished that was within the last council's projection. Some of those are the street in Mergen, the footpath in Mergen, the footpath and the footbridge in Wandai, some of our new bridges. Our road and maintenance works guys have done an absolutely fantastic job, and they're continuing to do that. And with our support and the community's support, when that hand knows what that hand's doing, we will make things happen. It's a credit to the people behind the scenes here. To deliver this budget, the work that's gone into that with our general managers in all departments, that has been seriously testing. So I urge people out there to be healthy and to be positive. We've got a great future in front of us. We, as a council, over the next 4 years, have got to bring down budgets every year. Let's hope we can continue to do so and look forward to the future, and congratulate you, Mayor Otto. We've had to make, and you've had to make, some serious decisions, and like I said, decisions council has not had to make before. I look forward to being here working with the rest of this council for a period of time. We have a new council, we have a fresh council, and I think we can only go forward. So with that, I'd like to thank Mayor Otto, our CEO, our staff, our general managers, my fellow councillors for the support, and more so the people out there So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Henshin. Very well said. Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to the budget. Firstly, I want to thank my fellow councillors and staff for all their work that put this and what is and will be a difficult budget to deliver. Firstly, I'd like to particularly acknowledge you, as every other councillor in the chamber has this morning, Mr Mayor, on the work that you've done. You spent a weekend that I noted that you stayed up, hardly had any sleep basically through that particular weekend, and you've led this budget with your background of accountancy and all that sort of stuff, and you've crunched the numbers, and you could almost say that you could acknowledge that it was a mayor's budget, but we have had input. Every councillor that sits in this particular chamber has had input. As Councillor Henshin and all the other councillors have noted, that we had open and strong debate, and I don't necessarily, along with Councillor Henshin, agree with everything, but due to, as a councillor, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that our code says as a democratic process you go through and the majority rules, and you have to, as a councillor, you are obligated to work with the best you can with what is voted on in the chamber, and that is what's been done. And along with Councillor Henshin, I will assure the community that I will do everything I possibly can to make this budget work. It is going to be very difficult, and I have some concerns, and I'd just like to acknowledge my main concern is the 0% rate rise on the general rates. I acknowledge that some sections of our region are doing it tough and other areas are going along okay. It's going to be difficult. Councillor Duff acknowledged the fact that everyone wants a 0% rate rise, but we also have an obligation to be delivering the services, and it will become more evident as I go further into it. The service charges, the water, sewage and rubbish are all going up, and rubbish is going up a little bit extra to support the increased opening hours for Mergen and Wandai, as you have acknowledged. We have old infrastructure under the ground that will need replacing, and that's been acknowledged also in previous councillors' addresses. And that's what you do in business, I guess. You match your services to community desire and then you work out what that will cost. Now, we've got a 0% rate rise. You've also indicated that some people will be going up with the last particular time with averaging and all that sort of stuff, and the others will go down. So for the Mergen and Wandai tips, to increase the hours, it costs more, and so we ask a little more. I think it'd come to about $2.59 per person, I believe, across the region for those tips to get those extra hours, which I was in support of. I think it's only fair and equitable across the region that all services, particularly dumps, are open to our major areas. So that's another cost there. To cut council's revenue stream and the general rate will have an ongoing effect in future years. And I find that someone also is left to pay the bill. I know it's a 0%, and I'm in belief that it's difficult to catch up. If you ever do catch up, it has an ongoing effect. Then to cut significant costs out of the budget and expect service levels to continue as they were or better is, I believe, not practical. Something will give, and I hope I'm wrong on this one. I hope that in 6 months' time, I'm proven wrong, that our council can continue to deliver the same or better level of service, but I have my concerns. Now, I'll revert to the roads that Councillor Duff has said. I'm proud to note that we have maintained the same level of funding for the roads, and whilst first to admit that we are far from or nowhere near perfect, we are a long way in front of where we have been. Now, to say that we have the same level of money or the same amount of money is correct, but we also, as you indicated, Mr Mayor, that we absorbed the CPI increase and other costs, so therefore the same amount of money, it will be difficult to deliver the same level of service because that money will have to absorb those extra costs. The budget does have the potential to work if we all pull together, and I believe we have to look at our assets, and by that I mean really hard look, and where possible reduce assets to improve our position so we can deliver a high level of service. Now, this was one topic that we have spoken about and debated quite openly in council, and I just seriously believe that we have assets that are duplicated and past their use-by date throughout our region. Now, what they are, that's for us as a council, and that's where I think this budget can work as long as we have a real hard look at our assets and how we maintain them. I don't think you can have both, the high amount of assets and continue a high level of service. That's just my belief, and I do want to stipulate these are my views. I'm not speaking on behalf of the council, these are my views. And unless we reduce the assets, it'll be hard to maintain that service and current standard. But this year, we are fortunate to have both state and federal government support for our capital program, but that will not be there every year. And yes, we do have that, and Councillor Duff acknowledged that early in the piece, but that's a great thing to have, and there's going to be some great things going forward. But again, hopefully we're spending it wisely and not putting extra assets, because it all comes back and it's all the ratepayer money. At that time, we may have to totally support our own assets, so hard decisions will need to be made. So when that funding and the level of funding that we have, and COVID's gone and all that sort of stuff, and hopefully it's gone sooner rather than later, we have some hard decisions. And this all comes back to the budget, and we are not in a position to build any new assets and need to consolidate our position now while we can. Roads and drainage will continue to be a focus of the council. And to finish, council's budget is like any household budget. You need to live within your means, and you cannot do everything that is asked. That's all I have to say on the overall budget. And I guess I want to thank you and acknowledge yourself, Mr Mayor, my fellow councillors, CEO Mark Pitt, all the staff, particularly General Manager Jarvis and her staff up in the finance, and everybody else, and particularly the men and women out on the field that deliver the services to the community. They're the ones that I'd really like to thank, because they, as you've acknowledged, 2.5% pay rise, way overdue. Those people need to be acknowledged for the fact that they've worked through 2 or 3 years without a pay rise and accepted that on the chin. And I'm glad to say that we've been able to absorb that. So in saying that, I will support the budget, and I will guarantee and commit to working with the community and the council to deliver the best possible outcome we possibly can. But they're just my concerns going forward. And like I said in my address, I hope that I stand here in 6 months and say congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. The resolution is that the Mayor's budget address for 2020-21 budget be received. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Right, item 6.3 on the agenda is indeed the adoption of the 2020-21 budget. The requirements for the preparation and content of the budget are set out in section 169 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. A local government's budget for each financial year must be prepared on an accruals basis and include statements of the following for the financial year for which it is prepared and the next 2 financial years: financial position, cash flow, income and expenditure, and changes in equity. The budget must also include a long-term financial forecast, a revenue statement, and a revenue policy. The budget must include each of the following measures of financial sustainability for the financial year for which it is prepared and the next 9 financial years: asset sustainability ratio, net financial liabilities ratio, and operating surplus ratio. The budget must include the total value of the change, expressed as a percentage, in the rates and utility charges levied for the financial year compared with the rates and utility charges levied for the previous budget. The relevant budget documents are presented for adoption. It is the officer's recommendation that, pursuant to sections 169 and 170 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council's budget for the 2020-21 financial year, incorporating the statements of financial position, statements of cash flow, the statements of income and expenditure, the statements of changes in equity, capital budget, the long-term financial forecast, the revenue statement, the revenue policy, adopted by Council Resolution on 29 April 2020, the relevant measures of financial sustainability, and the total value of the change, expressed as a percentage, in the rates and utility charges levied for the financial year compared with the rates and utility charges levied in the previous budget, as tabled, be adopted. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Frohoff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Do we have any further comments, councillors, like to speak for or against the budget? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in response to some of Councillor Jones's comments, I do agree, and looking ahead, my concern is the heavy burden our region carries in the depreciation on our books now and into the future, the considerable number of assets we hold and the ageing nature of our infrastructure. From what I understand, these challenges are not unique, with many councils facing the same problem. Over the next year, I support this council working closely with its community to work through the asset management plans to together review the purpose of our community's assets and the role they play. It's my view that as a region, we must ensure we are investing in assets that meet our community's needs and deliver value now and into the future. It's my understanding from the budget workshops that we cannot afford to maintain all of Council's community-owned assets to the standards in which our shareholders, our ratepayers, expect and deserve for the money they invest. In my short time with Council, it seems we are spreading our resources thin, that we are trying to maintain so many assets that it's difficult to do this well. In the portfolio briefings I've been part of, we've heard that most community buildings are largely on reactive maintenance strategies, which means things are only getting fixed when they're absolutely broken, and normally by then it's maintenance that leads to another issue because it should have been fixed some years before. I understand some of these conversations are going to be difficult. However, I'd much prefer to see we are maintaining our community buildings to the appropriate standard in line with their usage and role in the community. I also think if we open our minds, we may just find other opportunities that exist, or potentially community groups who may be looking for a space and their activities which will add to the rich culture of our communities. I want to be clear that any review of community assets doesn't mean taking services away from the community. For me, it's about starting a conversation about what is delivering value. What are the opportunities to seek external funding? And are there other areas that the community would prefer to see ratepayers' funds invested in? For me, this is a task that must be done hand in hand with our community and all key stakeholders. And I hope if we put our minds to it, we may just come up with a better solution. I'd much prefer to start this conversation than continue to see this council juggle what is broken and what is more broken and needs more urgent repair. Our ratepayers deserve that from this council. I'd much prefer we start this journey together and start it now than watch our community assets go to ruin. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Any other councillors wishing to speak to the matter? Right, if not, we'll put the motion to a vote that pursuant to sections 169 and 170 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council's budget for the 2020-2021 financial year be adopted. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Moving on to item 6.4 on the agenda, Business Activities 2020-2021, the Local Government Act 2009, Division 2 Business Reform, including competitive neutrality, and the Local Government Regulation 2012 require Council to identify and make decisions about Council's business activities on an annual basis. This report sets out the legislative requirements and provides recommendations for Council in relation to Council's business activities. It is the Officer's recommendation that in relation to Council's business activities, Council determines that those activities listed in the Statement of Business Activities, Table 1, contains a list of all the business activities that Council conducted, requiring identification in accordance with the Local Government Act 2009, Division 2, Section 43, and the Local Government Regulation 2012. 2, Council has no significant business activities that meet the threshold set out as per Section 19 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. Council determines that those business activities categorised as other business activities, Table 2, are those activities that meet the prescribed activity threshold of $340,000 in accordance with Section 39 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. And 3, Council resolve not to apply the Code of Competitive Conduct to any business activity in 2020/2021 in accordance with the Local Government Act 2009, Section 47(7) and the Local Government Regulation 2012. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Henshin. Councillors wishing to speak for or against the motion? Right, well, we'll put it to vote. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.5 on the agenda at 1:43. Your notes for this special meeting is the adoption of the Code of Competitive Neutrality Complaints Policy. Section 48 of the Local Government Act 2009 advises that Council must adopt a process for resolving competitive neutrality complaints. It is the officer's recommendation that the South Bennett Regional Council Code of Competitive Neutrality Complaints Policy, Statutory 006, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Fryloff, and a second. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillors wishing to speak for or against the motion? All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.6 at 1:50 is the Statement of Estimated Financial Position to 30 June 2020. Section 205 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 requires a Statement of Estimated Financial Position to be presented to the local government's annual budget meeting. A Statement of Estimated Financial Position is a document stating the financial operations and financial position of the local government for the previous financial year or to 30 June 2020. Required reports are attached for perusal. It is the officer's recommendation that pursuant to Section 205 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the Statement of Financial Operations and Financial Position of the Council in respect of the previous financial year, the Statement of Estimated Financial Position, be received and its contents noted. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Duff. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Fryloff. Do any councillors wish to speak for or against the motion? If not, I will put it to the vote. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.7 at 1:53, Differential General Rates Categories and Criteria, 2020-21. Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 provides that each local government must levy general rates on all rateable land within the local government area. Further, Section 80 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 provides that Council may levy general rates, differential general rates that differ for different categories of rateable land in the local government area. Accordingly, for the following reasons, Council has determined that there shall be 46 categories of land for general rating purposes. The valuation of the South Bennett Regional Council area, which became effective from 1 July 2019, would lead to rating inequities and a distortion of the relativities in the amount of rates paid in the various parts of the local government area if only one general rate were adopted. The level of services provided to that land and the cost of providing services compared to the rate burden that would apply under a single general rate, and the differing levels of demand that some land users place on the services which Council is required to provide. It is the officer's recommendation that Council adopt differential general rates for the year ending 30 June 2021. Pursuant to Section 81 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the categories into which rateable land is categorised, the description of those categories in accordance with Sections 81.4 and 81.5 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the method by which land is to be identified and included in its appropriate category is as listed in the table below. Council delegates to the Chief Executive Officer the power, in accordance with Sections 81.4 and 81.5 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, to identify the rating category to which each parcel of rateable land belongs. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Do any councillors wish to speak for or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to support this, but as Councillor Shoemaker said in her comments earlier, we are going to be looking at this, and I think we need to have a really good look at it, because a lot of the categories, a lot of the it's all historical, and we just inherited a lot of it just after amalgamation, and we just went with that. And I think most councils have just, you go back and why there's a reason for this and a reason for that, and it was just what they did previously. So I think it is time to have a really good look right across all of our categories to try and get more equitable ratings. So just happy to support it, but yeah, keen to look at it into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you. And I agree with Councillor Duff's comments, and I just want to recognise the work that's been done behind the scenes by our council staff and particularly the finance team. There's been some great reports compiled around rating in general, and I think it sets us up with a really great foundation for where we go from here. I agree. I think it's a legacy issue, 46 categories. I know some councils do have categories of that number, and I just want to make sure that we have the right categories for the land across the region. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Right, well, we'll put the resolution to the vote. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 6.8, Differential General Rates 2020-2021, Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 80 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 provides for a local government to levy general rates that differ for different categories of rateable land in the local government area. Council has decided to implement 46 categories of land for general rating and is required to set rates for each of those categories. It's the officer's recommendation that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 80 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the differential general rate to be made and levied for each differential general rate category for the year ending 30 June 2021 is as follows, and those 46 categories are listed in the agenda. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Jones, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Do any councillors wish to speak for or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Schumacher.
Just a question through you, Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, to ensure that council could pass on the 0% general rate rise, the rate in the dollar has had to be adjusted across the categories to ensure the council did not collect $1 more than the general rates last year. I just want to confirm that that's correct, that while the rate in the dollar has changed and we do expect the second year of averaging for valuations, it may result in some changes for some people's rates depending on their valuation, but largely that's the reason why these rate in the dollar amounts have been changed from previous years.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Schumacher. CEO or Susan, would you like to respond? Thank you, General Manager Jarvis. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss. Thank you for the question, Councillor. That is correct. Yes, you have just asserted that is what has happened with the rate in the dollar change.
So we're just confirming that Council will be connecting no additional revenue in relation to general rates, but the rates in the dollar have had to be adjusted, of course, in line with the 3-year averaging. That's the result of those the phasing in of those valuations, revaluations that were undertaken on 1 July 2019.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, there's only one minor qualification which doesn't impact the rate in the dollar, is if we have new ratepayers come online, subdivisions. So the expansion of the rate base will draw extra revenue. But the short answer to your question is yes, that's been adjusted for. But if we have, for example, a new ratepayer come online, that will have an impact to the revenue stream and it will show as increased rates. But it's that expansion of the rate base, which is a good thing.
Yes, thank you, CEO Mark. That's an important clarification. Right, do any other councillors wish to speak for or against the motion? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Right, we'll keep working through these. Item 6.9 is the minimum general rates for 2020-21. Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 77 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 provides for a local government to fix a minimum amount of general rates. Further, it allows a local government to fix a different minimum amount of general rates for each differential rating category. Council has decided to implement 46 differential rating categories and is required to set a minimum general rate for each of these categories. The officer's recommendation is that in accordance with Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 77 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the minimum general rate to be made and levied for the year ending 30 June 2021 for each differential general rating category is as follows, and those minimum rates are listed in the agenda against each of those 46 categories. Mr. CEO, I do believe that there's, of course, no change to that minimum rate from the last budget. So I've just confirmed that there's no change to those minimum rates. They will stay as they are as a result of the Council's rating strategy. Those minimum rates for the 2020-21 year will remain as they were for the 19-20 year. Do we have a mover for the resolution? Thank you very much, Councillor Froloff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? No? All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.10, averaging land valuations 2020-2021. The Council recognises that as a result of the recent revaluation, some property owners face significant increases in general rates, as their property valuation has increased significantly higher than the average. In order to minimise the impact of valuation increases for these property owners, Council has decided to utilise the averaging tool set out in Chapter 4, Part 3 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. It is the Office's recommendation that pursuant to Sections 74 and 76 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, for the purpose of making and levying differential general rates for the 2020-2021 financial year, the rateable value of land is the 3-year averaged value of land. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Duff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Right, does any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Yes, Mr Mayor, just wanted to make it clear that so that the rural people in particular, where this would mostly apply, their rates, bottom line, may go up or down depending on what their valuations were. So because we've averaged it out, even though we've got a zero rate rise, it's not going to necessarily show exactly the same because of this averaging. So just so that if there's any people that are not clear about it, that's why. So just want to get it out there. So just want to make that point. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff, and it is very important that we provide clarity to the community, to the ratepayers in relation to this, that while Council has adopted a budget that will result in no additional revenue other than for new properties, that won't mean that all ratepayers will pay the same as they did last year in general rates. As we've made clear, it will depend on which way your valuation, your average valuation over the 3-year term has moved in relation to the average. Some ratepayers will pay more as a result of those land increases. Some ratepayers may pay less as a result of where their average valuation stands in relation to this. So, as I said before, I will be looking to hold a series of community forums throughout the region around the release of the rates notice in early August, so that we can, as a council, communicate and I suppose educate and inform the community more effectively on why there is perhaps a difference in their general rates and how the valuation system works. Can I also make it clear to the community that and to everybody that the council does not, as we all know, council does not set these land valuations. These land valuations are undertaken by the Department of Natural Resources, Mines and Energy. DNR, as I call them, they manage and are responsible for these valuations. Council has to accept the valuations that we are given. We work with what we are given, and we have no capacity to influence or change the valuation on individual landholders' properties. That is a matter for the property holder and DNR, not a matter that council can have any say in. So I just want to make that very clear. Council has adopted an averaging methodology pursuant to the 1 July 2019 valuations, which did see a significant increase, particularly for many rural landholders as a result of recent sales that happened prior to that time. But I'd just like to make sure that everyone does fully understand that council has absolutely no involvement in setting those valuations for those properties. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with the comments you've made, and I look forward to being a part of those workshops. I think there's a really great opportunity for our community to open up this discussion around rates and really understand the different categories and the tools in which council adopt to try and reduce the impact on ratepayers locally. With that in mind, I'd just like to acknowledge the previous council who did adopt this strategy last year as a tool and a method to try and reduce the impact of those increasing valuations on local residents. I think it's really important that people realise that this is the second year. There will be another year next year, and the opportunity to undertake the full rates review is a great one to bring everyone across our region on the journey together and really understand our different categories and the different tools and methods that are used to calculate rates. So thank you. I look forward to those workshops and the opportunity to talk about this more openly in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Right, so confirming the resolution that the motion, that pursuant to section 74 and 76 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, for the purpose of making and levying differential general rates for the 2020-21 financial year, the rateable value of land is the 3-year averaged value of land. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 6.11, setting the limit of increase in the amount of general rates. Council recognises that as a result of previous revaluations, some property owners face large increases in general rates, as their property valuation has increased significantly higher than the average. In order to minimise the impact of significant value increases for these property owners, Council has decided to place a limit on the increase in general rates applicable to each rate assessment. It's the officer's recommendation that pursuant to section 116 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the Council resolves that the amount of the differential general rate to be levied for the financial year ending 30 June 2021 on the categories of land identified in the table below be limited to an amount no more than an amount equal to the amount of the general rate levied on the land in the previous financial year, increased by the percentage identified in percentage increase of the table below. And that table is provided there within the agenda, and that percentage increase is shown on all of those rating categories at 30%. For land on which the rate levied for the previous financial year was a full year, the amount of the rate levied for the previous financial year plus 30%. For land on which the rate levied for the previous financial year was a period less than the full year, the relevant annual amount had the land been levied for the full previous financial year plus 30%. For land on which the differential rate category has changed, the relevant annual amount for the new differential rate category had that category been levied in the previous financial year plus 30%. And for land on which a new valuation assessment has been issued by the State Valuer General, the relevant annual amount had the land been levied under the valuation assessment for the full previous financial year plus 30%. Do we have a mover for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Jones. Does any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to point out that this is another tool that council uses to try and keep the rates down as much as we can. It's capping, and that's something we'll be looking at into the future as to whether we have caps or what we do with rating, but just wanted to point out that, again, we've used a tool to try and minimise the impact of rates on our, particularly our, probably, again, our rural landholders in this particular instance. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Duff. As Councillor Duff has highlighted, this motion is to continue the practice of council of limiting the extent to which a rates assessment is increased by capping such at 30% for those properties that have increased significantly as a result of those DNR valuations. Right, does any other councillor wish to add to the motion? If not, put it to the vote. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.12 on the agenda is at 176. It's a special charge for Rural Fire Brigades 2020-21 in accordance with the Fire and Emergency Services Act of 1990 and the Forage and Emergency Services Fees Amendment Regulation 2018, allowing local governments to make and levy a charge on all parcels of rateable land serviced by a rural fire brigade. The Council decided to levy a charge of $25 per rateable assessment on all rateable lands not situated in an urban fire brigade area as defined by the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services. The officer's recommendation is that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Section 128A of the Fire and Emergency Services Act 1990, the Council make and levy a special charge to be known as the Rural Fire Levy Special Charge of $25 per rateable assessment on all rateable land within the region to which the overall plan applies. That also attracts a Class E emergency management levy pursuant to Part 3 of the Fire and Emergency Services Regulation 2011 to fund the operations of the rural fire brigades that operate throughout the rural areas of the South Bennett region. The overall plan for the rural fire levy special charge is as follows. The rateable land to which the plan applies is all rateable land within the region other than rateable land that is liable to pay an urban district fire levy. The service facility or activity for which the plan is made is the ongoing provision and maintenance of rural firefighting equipment for the rural fire brigades that operate throughout the rural areas of the region. The time for implementing the overall plan is 1 year commencing 1 July 2020 and ending 30 June 2021. The estimated cost of implementing the overall plan is $217,000, and the level of contribution each brigade receives will be decided by the local area rural fire services committee. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? All those in sorry, Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
I'd just like to use the opportunity just to acknowledge the work that rural fire brigades contribute to our region, that it's really important, and I think this money is well invested in helping those services to continue. We saw that earlier this year with the bushfires across the region, and fully supportive of this levy and the way in which it's invested back in our community for the provision of rural fire services. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, well said. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Duff.
Yes, I'd just like to endorse what Councillor Shoemaker has said and also say that most of those people are volunteers out on the ground. They just do an awesome job. I see the work that Mondra Rural Fire Brigade do, and it's just incredible. They work day and night to keep our community safe. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that most of those people are volunteers.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Duff. And of course, if anyone's out there and wants to contribute to the community, no better way than to join the Rural Fire Brigade service. They provide, as councillors have said, my colleagues have said, they provide a very, very important service to our region. And if you look around the countryside at the moment with the amount of fuel that's along the sides of the roads and in the paddocks and even through our communities, they're going to be very much needed, hopefully, only in terms of a preventative measure. Hopefully we don't see any of those damaging bushfires in our region in the coming season. Right, all those in favour of the resolution, thank you all. Passed unanimously. Item 6.13, special charge, annual implementation plan for road maintenance of Wattle Grove Road Quarry, 2020-21. In accordance with Section 92.3 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the Council decided to make a special charge on land described as Lot 459 on Plan FY 2482 and situated at 1304 Wattle Grove Road, Wattle Grove. The annual implementation plan specifically relates to the 2020-21 financial year and sets out the actions or processes that are required to be carried out in the financial year for the services, facilities or activities to which the special rates apply under the overall plan. The purpose of this annual implementation plan is to support the implementation of the overall plan, specifically as it relates to the 2020-21 financial year, describe the road maintenance, road upgrading and road replacement works Council will be undertaking in 2021 financial year to implement the road program under the overall plan and outline the costs of implementing the road program under the overall plan for the 2021 financial year. A brief summary of the overall plan for the Kingaroy Quarry Supplies Wattle Grove Road Special Charge adopted by Council on 12 June 2019 is as follows. Implement a road maintenance, road upgrading and road replacement program for Wattle Grove Road, Midmore Road, Deep Creek Road and River Road, which is necessary to mitigate and manage the impacts on these roads caused by the use of the property for extractive industry purposes. The rateable land to which the plan applies is Lot 459 on FY 2482. The time for implementing the overall plan is 20 years, commencing 1 July 2019 and ending 30 June 2039. The extractive industry operation being conducted on this land specifically contributes to the need for the Wattle Grove Road program. It is the officer's recommendation that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy a special charge to be known as the Kingaroy Quarry Supplies Wattle Grove Road Special Charge of $4,116.13 on land described as Lot 459 on FY 2482 and situated at 1304 Wattle Grove Road, Wattle Grove, to fund road maintenance and reconstruction costs associated with the operation of the extractive industry operation at the site, and that Council adopts the annual implementation plan and the proposed special charge for 2020-21 financial year pursuant to the revenue policy of 2020-21 and the revenue statement 2020-21. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Jones, and a second. I thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillors wishing to speak for or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Duff.
I'm just thinking for the purpose of the councillors and the gallery, and just if the general manager could explain why there's a few more of these to follow, why there's individual ones and why they're separated out and not just an overall quarry levy.
Yes, thank you, General Manager Mann.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just in response to the councillor's question, the special rates are levied in accordance with the DA conditions of the quarry when it's developed. Those quarries will pay per quarry an annual amount in relation to a maintenance contribution and accelerated degradation of the assets caused by the traffic. The charge is only levied when the quarry is operational. So you'll see some of the charges are not to be levied this year, but they are still adopted in accordance with the budget process. The charges are fairly minimal given the size of some of these quarries. Council has worked with the developers to make sure that we get probably a reasonable charge. And any funds that are not spent are carried over into next financial year and specifically reserved for these roads. Council is unable to move that money to other assets. So they're quite specific as to that's why you see so many resolutions. They can only be taken for the purpose in which the quarry is operating. So if that explains.
Yeah, thanks very much,
Thank you.
General Manager. Thank you, Councillor Duff. Right, all those in favour of the motion? Thank you. Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.14 on the agenda at 182 is a special charge on the annual implementation plan, road maintenance, Tim Dwyer Road Quarry, 2020-21. A brief summary of the overall plan for the Tim Dwyer Road Quarry special charge was adopted by Council on 12 June 2019 as follows: to implement a road maintenance, road upgrading and road replacement program for Tim Dwyer Road, Greenwood Creek Road, Old Esk North Road, South Street and Arthur Street East, which is necessary to mitigate and manage the impacts of those roads caused by the use of the property for extractive industry purposes. The rateable land to which the plan applies is Lot 169 on CSH 697. The time for implementing the overall plan is 20 years, commencing 1 July 2019 and ending 30 June 2039. The extractive industry operation being conducted on this land specifically contributes to the need for the Tim Dwyer Road program. The officer's recommendation that pursuant to Section 94 of Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council does not levy a special charge on the Tim Dwyer Road Quarry situated on land described as Lot 169 on CSH 697 or 79 Tim Dwyer Road, Eastern Ango, in the 2020-21 financial year, as the quarry has not commenced significant operations, and that Council adopts the annual implementation plan for the 2020-21 financial year pursuant to the relevant policy 2021 and the revenue statement 2021. Do we have a move for such? Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Second, I thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any councillor wish to speak to or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge the piece in the report here around the communication and consultation that's actually occurred internally and externally in relation to these charges. In particular, that Council has worked with across its infrastructure and finance corporate departments in order to develop these plans and programs, and additional consultation has occurred between the quarry property owners and operators of the extractive industry properties. And the land owners are aware of these special charges, as in the instant they are also the applicant. There's been considerable consultation with our lawyers and to ensure council adheres to all legal requirements with these charges. So I just want to make it known that these charges have been something that council has been working closely with the landholders for quite some time. And please correct me if I'm wrong, GM Meehan. No, that's correct. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Right, any other councillors? If not, all those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.15 at 186 is a special charge on the annual implementation plan, road maintenance, Wilson's Road Quarry. Mr. CEO, can I go straight to the officer's recommendations?
I would, Mr. Mayor. They're all the same format. They're all taken the same advice.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. So the officer's recommendation is that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy a special charge to be known as the Gordon Brook Sand Quarry Wilson's Road Special Charge of $4,812.70 on land described as Lot 49 on B0544 and situated at Wilson's Road, Gordon Brook, to fund road maintenance and reconstruction costs associated with the operation of the extractive industry operation at the site, and that Council adopts the annual implementation plan, the proposed special charge for 2021 financial year pursuant to the Revenue Policy 2021 and the Revenue Statement 2021. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Jones, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any councillor wish to speak for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.16 at 189 is a special charge, annual implementation plan road maintenance for Burra Road Quarry. The officer's recommendation is that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act and the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council does not levy a special charge on the Burra Road Quarry situated on land described as Lot 67 on BO576 or 1229 Burra Road, Geelong, in the 2021 financial year, as the quarry has not commenced significant operations, and the Council adopts the annual implementation plan and the proposed special charge for 2021 financial year pursuant to the Revenue Policy 2021 and the Revenue Statement 2021. We have a move for such. Thank you, Councillor Jones. A second. I thank you, Councillor Froloff. Any councillor wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I just
Thank you, Councillor Duff.
It's actually pronounced Burra. I just wanted to let you know that. Yes.
Right. So a clarification from Councillor Duff. It's Burra. There you go. Thank you very much for correcting me there. Right. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 6.17 is at 193. Special charge, annual implementation plan, road maintenance, Manar Road Quarry. Officer's recommendation, pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council does not levy a special charge on the Manar Road Quarry situated on land described as Lot 7 on BO179 or 1551 Manar Road, Boondooma, in the 2021 financial year, as the quarry has not commenced significant operations, and that Council adopts the annual implementation plan and the proposed special charge for 2021 financial year pursuant to the Revenue Policy 2021 and the Revenue Statement 2021. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Jones. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Duff. Does any councillor wish to speak? All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 6.18, separate charge, community rescue and evacuation, 2020-21. The officer's recommendation that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 103 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy a separate charge to be known as the Community Rescue and Evacuation Separate Charge in the sum of $5 per rateable assessment to be levied equally on all rateable land in the region for the purpose of sponsoring the aerial emergency rescue and evacuation transport providers that service the South Bennett region. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion or against? Yes, thank you, Councillor Potter.
I think we all know just how much Lifelight do within our area. They make so many evacuations, even just alone from the Kingaroy Hospital, but one evacuation costs around the $15,000 to $17,000 depending on the type of evacuation. So this is probably one of the best charges we do.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, and I'd agree with Councillor Potter's comments, and I'd just like to thank and acknowledge, just the other day, my sister actually, luckily, was able to access this service due to she had to have her appendix out, and I'm just so grateful of the work that the Kingaroy Hospital does and the work that Lifelight does in our community, because I've attended many fundraisers over the years, and I'm more than happy as a ratepayer to pay this small amount to that service, and I'm just really grateful that they were able to help my sister at that point in time the other night. And every time that chopper flies over, I think we all think about the families of the region and why it's flying over. So I think it's a really valuable donation that every ratepayer across the region contributes to this really important service, and I'd just like to acknowledge that.
Right, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Henson.
Yeah, I'd like to just, Mr Mayor, bring to people's attention and certainly the public what an important facility this is. And for a little bit of, and it's not useless information, there is something like 263 evacuations through this facility per year. That's almost one a day or one every, if you count that back in weeks and months, that saves a life. How important is that?
Yes, well said. Thank you very much, Councillor Henson. And of course, as councillors have outlined, a very important service to our community, to our region, and the $5 levy is an increase from $4, so it's an extra $1 per assessment per year, and that will result in a total of approximately $87,000 being distributed to Lifelight for this important service. Right, all those in favour of the motion? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 6.19 is at 198, separate charge for the Waste Management Levy 2020-21. It's the officer's recommendation that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 103 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy a separate charge to be known as the Waste Management Separate Charge in the sum of $162.50 per rateable assessment, to be levied equally on all rateable land in the region for the purpose of providing and maintaining waste facilities and services that are not met from other fees and charges collected on a user pays basis, meeting public expectations in matters of disposal of refuse that affect public health and visual amenity of the area, and rehabilitation of closed waste disposal sites. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Duff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Does any councillor wish to speak? Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Yes, Mr Mayor, this levy funds all of those transfer stations around our region, and I know a lot of the rural areas have access to those transfer stations, and so, I'm supportive of this levy, although, no one likes to pay a levy, but it is a valuable, it's funding of some valuable assets across our region.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Duff. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, I'm also very supportive of this levy, particularly when it comes to the rehabilitation of closed waste disposal sites, into the future. That is something that our future generations have to look at and manage, and it's really important that we are putting money aside to cover those costs, because it's my understanding over time that it's not as simple as just capping a waste tip. There's a lot of monitoring, there's a lot of regulatory activities that are taken as part of waste management, undertaken as part of waste management in the region. And I think it's really important that we all as ratepayers are contributing to those future costs of rehabilitating landfills. I look forward to the work we will undertake over this next term of council to really understand opportunities to potentially reduce waste through recycling. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Shoemaker. Of course, this represents an increase of $12.50 $12, my apologies, from the previous 1920 budget. and as has been highlighted, it's an important part of council meeting its obligations in relation to waste facilities and services across the region. Right, all those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.20, Waste Management Utility Charges 2021. Now, it's the officer's recommendation. And can I summarise this one, CEO Mark? It's quite a long one. No? So as per the screen and put agenda, that sounds great to me. Thanks, Mr. CEO. I'm starting to go to the water bottle. So it's the officer's recommendation that in accordance with Section 94, Local Government Act 2009, Section 99 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy waste management utility charges for the supply of waste management services. They are shown there. Effectively, that's $168 for a collection service for domestic waste from a 240 litre waste container. So that's the residential charge, and the $243 charge for commercial. $168 will remain the Bunya Mountains Waste Management Utility Charge. Of course, that's a $3 increase from the previous year's $165 charge. So this is the wheelie bin collection service. Right, do we have a move for such? Thank you very much, Councillor Froloff, and a seconder, thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any councillor wish to speak to the matter? If not, all those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Right then, on to item 6.21 on the agenda, setting of the wastewater utility charges. And again, the motion is on the agenda. It can be seen on the screen, and it's effectively that what this resolution goes to is that for the first pedestal connected to any of council's wastewater system, a charge of $739 per annum per pedestal, and that other than additional pedestals installed in a private residence for the sole use of the occupier and their family, all additional pedestals will be levied a charge of $207 per annum per additional pedestal. In respect of each allotment of vacant land rateable under the Local Government Act, situated within the declared wastewater areas defined in Schedule A of the Revenue Statement, except for the Proston Common Effluent Disposal System, a charge of $517 per annum will apply. Where any premises are not connected to the council's wastewater system become connected during the year, the charges under Clause A1 shall become operative from the date of connection, with proportionate rebate from that date of those made under Clause A3. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Froloff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any councillor wish to speak to the matter? If I can just summarise, this is effectively the sewage charge, the wastewater sewage charge that we spoke about, and it represents a small increase that goes towards the cost of obviously maintaining and providing a sustainable sewage infrastructure for current and future generations. Right, all councillors wishing to we'll vote now. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Right, on to item 6.22. It's the Proston Common Effluent Disposal Utility Charges 2021. And the resolution again can be seen on the screen and in the agenda. The following utility charges be made for the provision of a common effluent disposal system for the year ended 30 June 2021. So the first pedestal charge will be $436, and that other than additional pedestals installed in a private residence, then the additional pedestals will be levied a charge for $136 per annum, and that premises not connected to the council common system being connected during the year, the charges shall become operative from the date of connection with proportionate rebate from that date, and a charge will not apply to vacant land that is capable of being connected to the system. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Duff. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Does any councillor wish to speak? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Water Supply Access Charge Methodology 2021. And again, it can be the resolution, the motion can be seen there in the officer's recommendation that a fixed charge for all connected and vacant, not connected land, covering the net cost associated with the source of supply, admin, technical overhead, depreciation, and finance costs for each scheme area be levied on those lands receiving a supply or to which a supply is deemed to be available. I won't read through the rest of the resolution, the motion, it's quite extensive, but do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Froelich, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion or have any questions in relation to that? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to confirm how many people across the network are actually connected to water. I understand there are a number of issues looking ahead in terms of water security, and I just want to really point out to the community that this charge, the reason for this charge, if we can, a question for GM Aaron Meehan.
Yes, thank you, General Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take the majority of that on notice, Councillor, just so I don't give you the wrong information. My understanding is on previous reports, you're looking, I believe it's just close to 10,000 connections, and maybe under 10,000 properties or vice versa. So it's quite substantial, but I'll take that on notice if that's okay, so I don't give you the wrong information.
Mr. Mayor, if I may help, back on page 140, we do the assessment of the significant business units every year, and those details are contained within that report. So there were less than 10,000 connections, but as the report detailed for the business unit activities, we're actually approaching close to threshold. So yeah, those ones are contained there.
And just
9,504. I was just quickly skimming through the page if you want the exact.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
It's pretty close to 10,000, I believe.
10,000, close to, but getting close to capacity. Yeah. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm, by close threshold, we are saying we are very close to capacity, as in there are very few available water access points left in the region.
Yeah, probably just to answer that one, Mayor, if I may, through you. The network is limited by capacity, so it's probably different. We have a number of connections that the CEO is talking about there. Once we hit a certain limit, we do trigger certain business unit principles we have to follow, such as full cost recovery. The current system is purely limited by capacity to deliver that water. So where we see in all of our schemes, there is minimal capacity to extend based on allocation, with the exception, obviously, in Mergen that we've discussed previously, that there's large capacity of high priority water there, which would be available for industrial expansion if needed. But otherwise, the limit of the network is very much set and only extended through proper analysis and options and feasibility.
Yes, thank you, General Manager. Okay, we'll have a vote on the motion in relation to that methodology. All those in favour? Thank you. Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 6.24 is the water supply consumption charge methodology. Again, it can be seen there on screen and in the agenda. Effectively, the motion is that in respect of the water supply schemes of Blackbutt, Boondooma Dam, Kingaroy, Cumbia, Mergen, Nanango, Proston, Tingura, Wandai, Warrul and Yallakil, the council operates a 3-tier banding system based on the volume of water used in kiloliters and the capacity of the meter connected. For connections greater than 20 millimetres, the steps are increased proportionally with the capacity factor for each metre size, and the tiers and steps, or steps that apply to all size connections, are shown in the table listed there. In respect of Proston Rural Water Supply Scheme, that a flat charge applied to all water consumed. It also includes, for high volume commercial properties, a capped 2-tier system for greater than 200,000 kilolitres. Right, do we have a mover for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Froelich, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Does any councillor wish to speak or have any questions in relation to such? All those in favour? Thank you all. Resolution passed unanimously. 6.24, water supply charges. Right, again, you can see the motion there on screen and in the agenda. Effectively, what we're doing there is, again, applying charges that are levied in relation, as set out in the table, and in respect of residential tariffs for the water supply schemes. They're also showed in the relevant tables there. Again, that's the three-tiered system, where one can see the scaling up of the charges across those three tiers. Right, do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Fryloff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any councillor wish to speak for or against, or have any questions? No, comfortable with such. General Manager Meehan, did you want to just give us a quick summary, a quick couple of minute summary as to how that those water supply charges work across those three tiers? Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the charge is calculated basically on a consumption rate. So there's two different charges that we take through water. One is for your access, which mainly contributes to the upgrade of the upkeep of the infrastructure, and also to cover council's fixed costs that are associated with the operation and purchase of its allocations. The consumption charge is primarily attributed to the cost of treated and supply of that water through the allocation also. I would note that council significantly discounts its consumption compared to its actual costs. So the purpose of a tiered approach is very much to limit the consumption and encourage responsible use of council's water allocation. As the councillor asked previously just before, that the network is always under stress. So we ensure that we have very responsible water usage within the South Burnett, and always have, and we like to see that to continue. We do see different charges for residential versus commercial, and that again is reflective of the need and the purpose in which that water is used.
Yes, thanks very much, General Manager. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to acknowledge that really, in the scheme of things, water, as many councillors have said this morning, is such a valuable resource, and I value the service that council provides in terms of upkeeping the infrastructure, and I note how it is ageing and some of the challenges we face into the future around maintaining that infrastructure. I just want to note GM Meehan's statement around how much it significantly costs council to supply potable water, and that these charges, in my view, the rise, making a decision on any rise is not an easy decision. However, I do feel that these rises in the consumption charges for water are valid. They are value for money in terms of, I value the point that I can live here in town. When my tank runs dry, I have trickle feed, and I can tap into the town network and use the water and supply potable water to my house. So I just want to acknowledge that this does come at a cost, and that, as GM Meehan has said, that council has discounted this significantly over time, and that I support this increase in water charges, because I think it's important they are sustainable into the future.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. And of course, as General Manager Meehan has pointed out, we have effectively two elements to the charge, which include the access, what is known as the access charge, which has increased by 2%. So, for example, for a residential property where a 20 millimetre connection, where it was previously $611.50 per annum, that will now increase to $624 per annum. The other charges are shown in that first table. And in respect of the consumption charges, they will increase by 2.1%, so that, for example, for Tier 1 supply in residential areas listed there at Table 2A, the increase would be from $1.54 to $1.57, representing 3 cents per kilolitre. And the other charges can, of course, be shown there, the different categories, with, of course, as I pointed out before, a two-tiered system for those high-volume commercial users greater than 200,000 kilolitres per year. And I do believe General Manager Meehan, the only user of that to that capacity would be Swickers. Is that correct?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, the high volume charge is reflective of the contribution of water to that business. Just in relation to that, just to give some context around parity of usage, you would expect anyone in that tier over 200,000 that the commercial use that you talk about, we're talking 345,000 kilolitres a year. The next highest user behind that is around about 16,000 kilolitres a year. So it's a significant volume of water, which in context is councils reviewed that as a fit for purpose charge and applied a methodology which is consistent with other local government organisations for that sort of volume.
Yeah, thanks very much for clarifying that, General Manager Meehan, confirming that Swickers is in fact the only consumer using more than 200,000 kilolitres per year at 345,000 kilolitres, which is well in excess of the next user, way back at 16,000 kilolitres per year, and that those charges that are being levied are consistent with that being levied for commercial users across other regional councils. General Manager Meehan?
Yeah, just on that too, Mayor, we would welcome any other businesses to use that allocation in Mergen that's available. So there's plenty of spare there that we would apply that charge to consistently if they wanted to open that up again.
Yes, thanks very much, General Manager, and certainly pleased to see more industry and growth in the region so that we can see that water used productively as it is being done at Swickers. Can I again reinforce what I said in my Mayor's budget speech, and has been indicated here by other councillors, that Council faces significant challenges moving forward in relation to not just the ongoing operating and maintenance costs, but the capital costs and debt servicing charges, debt servicing costs that we're seeking to fund from the revenue that we receive from our ratepayers. Now, this is a very much a moderate increase of 2 and 2.1%. What we're endeavouring to do here is to effectively smooth smooth the rises, ease ratepayers through that process, but certainly recognising that council needs to be able to accumulate significant cash reserves if we are to be able to fund those future capital costs that we know are coming on the horizon in relation to some of our key water supply assets across the region. Could also make reference to the fact that Council will continue to work with the Jacobs consultants in further developing the water feasibility study. There's been good progress made to date, and that will of course be a crucial tool for Council in lobbying government to provide further assistance in shoring up our region's water supply and including Council's capacity to supply water to our urban and industrial users across the region. Right, well, if no other councillor wishes to speak for, against or in relation to the motion, we'll put it to the vote. In relation to the water supply charges for 2020-21, all those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 6.26 is the levy and payment of rates and charges 2021, and that can again be seen there. And this is the sections 107 and 118 of the local government regulation require council to determine the issue of and period covered by a rate notice and the date by which rates or charges must be paid. What the motion is, the officer's recommendation is that pursuant to section 107 of the regulations and section 114 of the Fire and Emergency Services Act, Council's rates and charges and the state government's emergency management fire and rescue levy be levied for the half year of the year 1 July 2020 to 31 December 2020 in August 2020, and for the half year 1 January 2021 to 30 June 2021 in February 2021. Right, it's also that section 1, in accordance with section 118 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the Council's rates, charges and the State Government's Emergency Management Fire and Rescue Levy be paid within 30 days of the issue of the rate notice. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Duff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Does any councillor wish to speak? Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I just wanted to encourage anyone that is having difficulty paying their rates that council is really keen for them to get on payment plans, and also that we have a hardship policy. So if anyone's having extreme difficulty in paying their rates, that can be looked at as well. So I just wanted to alert everybody to the fact that it's, if you are having trouble, certainly reach out to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. A very important point to note there. The council does have a financial hardship policy, and where ratepayers meet the conditions for such, there is the opportunity to come under that policy and get some perhaps additional time to pay should that be required. Right. Does any councillor wish to, any further comments from councillors? Wish to speak for or against? Okay. Well, all those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 6.27, the discount on rates. Again, the motion can be seen on the screen and in the notes. And effectively what this motion goes to is that the discount period will be a period of at least 30 clear days, commencing from the issue date shown on the rate notice and concluding on the due date shown on the rate notice. So effectively a continuance of the 30-day discount period, which then concludes on the due date, so 30 days from the due date. Okay, so again, just to read that, the discount period will be a period of at least 30 clear days commencing from the issue date shown on the rate notice and concluding on the due date shown on the rate notice. Does any a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Fryloff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Right, does any councillor wish to speak in relation to this one? Thank you, Councillor Duff.
I just want to let everyone know that the 10% is generous, and we've kept that 10%. I know a lot of other councils have cut back to 5%. And I just wanted to just put a shout out for our council for holding on to that 10% discount, because I know a lot of people jump in to pay that early, and it is a good incentive, but it's also a good 10% is a good discount.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Schumacher.
Yeah, I agree with that, Councillor Duff. I think through the budget workshops we did discuss that. We discussed the opportunity to actually follow suit with other councils and potentially review that rate. And I'm really pleased with the council's decision to maintain the 10% discount. I think it's a real help for households across the region, and I'd like to acknowledge council's support of that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Schumacher. Councillor Jones.
Yes, Mr Mayor, in this particular one, I hear all the comments that we've had. We've had a lot of discussion and resolutions on rates. Rates is the hardest and unfairest decision that a council will have to make. You'll never keep everybody happy, and if you fix someone else's problem, you create a problem across the other side of the street, and that's something that we need to take into consideration moving forward. And this is just my personal view again. I'm not speaking on behalf of council, but as a councillor, setting rates and delivering rates and all that sort of stuff, and keeping in mind the level of service and expectation of our community, it is one of the hardest and unfairest decisions that you'll make as a councillor. But I think with this 10%, I totally agree with it, but this has a potential. We can look at this as a help to our community. If they are struggling, we may be able to extend this 30-day period of discount out further. If need be, as we go further forward, we might be able to extend the period of discount on the 10%. You say here if it's paid within the discount period of 30 days. So we have an option there later on to maybe help the community out a bit further down to extend that discount rate period out if need be. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jones. CEO Mark, do we need to clarify, is that something that can be considered at the mid-year review at the end of December?
Oh, that's something that's considered by report. There are a range of complications. It can be done, yes, absolutely. Cash flow, there's a range of considerations. So I won't say traditionally, but it would be its own report as to council as to these are the options and these are the consequences.
Yes, thank you, Mr CEO. And if I can just Thank you, Councillor Jones. If I could just confirm too that the discount expense that has been factored into the budget numbers that we've received today is based on a 30-day discount period and a discount of 10% on those applicable charges, rates and charges that are levied. So any increase of the discount period would obviously could potentially provide an additional expense to council, which would affect the council bottom line. Right, well, if no other councillor wishes to speak for or against or has any questions, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 6.28 is the interest on overdue rates. And this one is obviously applying where there are overdue rates. Again, can be seen there in the agenda. And the officer's recommendation is that pursuant to section 133 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, compound interest on daily rates, compound interest on daily is calculated daily. I think what's trying to say is it's calculated daily at the rate of 8.53% per annum to be charged on all overdue rates or charges, and that council determine that rates or charges will be considered as overdue for the charging of interest if they remain unpaid after 30 days from the due date of the relevant rate notice. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Right, and does any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Just a question. I just wanted to confirm, so if you miss the discount period within that 30 days, there's another 30 days that council gives interest-free. I just want to confirm, is that what this is saying, or is this saying that interest starts from the day that the rates are overdue? Yes, GM Susan. So from the day your rates are overdue, there is a compounding interest applied to those rates.
Sorry. The way I understand your question, Councillor Shoemaker, is that you have your 30 days interest-free to a discount period of 10%, and then after the 30 days, that's when the interest starts to accrue. And the interest is set there by the Reserve Bank. We do the math there, and it changes from year to year. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, so we effectively, I think just to clarify for everyone's benefit, so effectively we have a number of key dates here. So we have the date that the rates notice is issued. We then have the due date. And the due date is 30 days from that date. Okay, so that's the 30 days within which the discount will be received. And that council determines, this motion is such that council will determine that rates or charges will be considered as overdue for the charging of interest if they remain unpaid after 30 days from the due date of the relevant rates notice. Okay, so you've got 30 days prior to the due date to pick up the discount, then there's 30 days after the due date to finalise payment without discount, but should you not pay within 30 days following the due date, then the motion is that the interest rate of 8.53% per annum will be charged in relation to the 2021 rates. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'd just like to reiterate of what Councillor Duff said before with regards to the hardship policy that Council has. So I'd like to make it known that if anyone does have issues paying their rates again, please contact Council as soon as possible.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Potter. That's important that we certainly communicate that message to the community, that in response to the drought and COVID-19, should you find the payment of your rates particularly challenging, please contact council. We do have a financial hardship policy, and it's there to support people in the community who find themselves in financial distress. Can I also confirm here that the maximum allowable interest rate per the Local Government Regulation 2012 is calculated by adding together the monthly average yield of 90-day bank accepted bills as published by the Reserve Bank of Australia as at the end of March in the financial year immediately before the current financial year, plus 8%. So for the 2021 financial year, this is 0.53% plus the 8%. Okay, so that is the maximum allowable interest rate per the Local Government Regulation 2012. This isn't a number that council determines in any degree of independence, with any degree of independence. This number is determined in accordance with the Local Government Regulation 2012. Right, all those in favour? Motion? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.29 on the agenda at 2:33 is setting the level of concession on rates and charges for approved pensioners, and it's the officer's recommendation that pursuant to sections 120, 121 and 122 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, a rebate of rates be granted to all ratepayers who are pensioners and who are eligible for the Queensland Government Pensioner Remission. The rebate will be set at 20% of the differential general rate, sewage utility charges, water utility charges and waste refuse utility charges, and the maximum concession granted per property shall be capped at $200 per annum. This concession reduces council's revenue by $200 per recipient at a total cost of approximately $795,000. Right, do we have a mover for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Duff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Does any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 6.30, exemptions and concessions on various special, separate and utility charges. And it's the officer's recommendation that pursuant to section 93 the Local Government Act 2009, Council provides an exemption of differential general rates and separate charges for properties as identified within the categories per the table below. And that pursuant to sections 120, 121 and 122 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council grants a rebate for various rates and charges for the financial year ending 30 June 2021 as identified in the table below and subject to the conditions listed in the motion. So the concession categories are stated in detail on the agenda. The notes, they're listed there. So I'll call for a mover for the motion. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion or have any questions? Thank you, Councillor Potter.
The council, we do get slammed a lot in this area saying we don't give any support to our local community groups. This is something that goes unknown. People don't talk about it, but this just shows how much we do give back to our community.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Potter. And I think if you look at the table there, it clearly demonstrates Councillor Potter's point that, ranging from like QCWA through to youth groups, seniors groups, kindergartens, service clubs, showgrounds, race grounds, museums, sporting groups, charitable groups, community-owned halls. There's quite a list there. The differential general rates is discounted to the extent of 100%. Separate rates, 100%. Water access varies between 50 and 100%, 0 and 100%, depending on the category. Sewage access as well, significantly discounted across most categories, and waste bin is discounted for the scouts and the guides. So yes, indeed, significant discounts applied there by council for those community groups, and that's all obviously part of council's policy supporting our community organisations. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge what Councillor Potter has said. This is a considerable investment in the rich fabric of our community in which these groups provide the services and the opportunities for community connection and quality of life. I think it's really admirable of council to actually offer exemptions on the rates for these groups, and I'd just like to second Councillor Potter's comments.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a very big supporter of this particular these concessions, and what I've said on numerous occasions is these are volunteers, and in many cases they're actually looking after our facilities. They're doing an amazing job. A lot of them applying for grants and actually upgrading our council facilities. So I think it's really great to see that we do give that 100% discount for the rates section, and I know that a lot of them don't appreciate that because they get those other charges and they think that we're charging for everything when we're actually exempting them 100% for rates. So yeah, really supportive of this, and I'm hoping that we can maintain like these kind of concessions into the future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Right, well, if we have no further council wishing to speak to the matter, we'll put it to the vote. All those for? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 6.31, concession of water consumption charges, hemodialysis machines, 2020-2021. It's the officer's recommendation that pursuant to sections 120, 121 and 122 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council allows an annual rebate of 190 kilolitres on the water usage to any patient who qualifies for and operates a home hemodialysis machine supplied by Queensland Health. Do we have a move for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Right, clearly an important concession for those people who unfortunately find themselves in a position of needing to utilise such. The concession will reduce council's revenue by $348.35 per recipient, and currently council has one recipient across the region costing us that $348.35. So we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. At 2:38, waiving minimum general rates. Now, council has determined that some classes of properties should be exempt from the minimum general rate. Generally, these properties are small parcels of land used for a pump site or small parcels of land worked in conjunction with other properties held in the same ownership. It is the officer's recommendation that pursuant to sections 120, 121 and 122 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council grants a rebate equal to the full value of the separate charges and part of the differential general rates equal to the difference between the minimum differential general rate for the appropriate category and the rate calculated using the rate in the dollar and the valuation for the properties identified hereunder. Any rateable land held as a permit to occupy for water facility purposes, namely bore and pump site and associated purposes only. Properties that are small parcels of land worked in conjunction with properties held in the same ownership and identified in the table hereunder as stated in the agenda. Do we have a move for such? Thank you, Councillor Fryloff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? All those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.33, financial hardship policy. Again, this is a quite extensive summary, but the officer's recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council financial hardship policy, statutory 012, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Duff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? All those in favour? All right, thank everybody for your attendance today at the special budget meeting for the 2020 year, and it's been quite an effort to get through all of that. Thank you for the attendance for the media and for those who've joined us for this very important special budget meeting. We'll now close the meeting, and we'll reconvene for the ordinary council meeting. Shall we after lunch, Mr. CEO, or can we? We can convene, so we can reconvene before lunch and then go to lunch at 12:30. Is that the plan? 12:15. Okay, we'll proceed. We'll call a close to the special budget meeting.